Welcome to Fun and Games Side Quests. Every episode is a different host sharing a video game they love and why they love it.
Hello there. My name is Ngachacha. I'm a father, a husband, a middle-aged gamer, and a pretty snobby Resident Evil fan. And today, I'm going to be discussing one of my favorite horror games of all time, Resident Evil 2 Remake. The Resident Evil community has a very, and I mean a very passionate fan base, which I'm a part of. And I would say the fan base is generally divided into two main groups. Half the fan base is incredibly dedicated and passionate about the original games, Resident Evil 1 through 3 from the PS1 generation. And they would argue that these games were, and still continue to be, the very best in the entire franchise and represent true survival horror. The other half of the fan base prefer Resident Evil 4 through 6, as they enjoy the third-person action games that are still intense, quite stressful, with little sprinkles of horror themes and inspirations, a different experience but still fun. And this brings us to the modern Resident Evil games, and in my opinion, demonstrates that Capcom is trying to please both fan bases. Because Resident Evil 7 Biohazard and Resident Evil 2 Remake lean very heavily into the slower paced survival horror experiences that take massive inspirations from the original games, while on the other hand, Resident Evil 3 Remake and Resident Evil Village are more action-oriented games that take inspirations from Resident Evil 4 through 6. In Resident Evil 2 Remake, the characters move slowly. Aiming can feel a bit awkward at times, and resources, including ammunition and bullets, are very, very scarce. Every single shot counts because you can, and you probably will, run out of bullets if you try to kill every single monster or zombie in your path. This resource management experience is incredibly stressful, but I believe a crucial aspect of these games because it ramps up the tension, it ramps up the horror experience because you have to decide which weapons, how much ammo, which healing items are you going to bring because you can't bring everything. Resident Evil 2 Remake doesn't give you some sort of bottomless backpack where you get to bring everything so that you feel more secure, more safe. You have to bring what you think, what you need to survive. Resident Evil 2 Remake is one of the best in the entire series. And I think it's because Capcom knew which direction to take this game, and because they were confident about it. Resident Evil 6 is generally panned by the Resident Evil community, and I don't think it's because it had poor controls or bad level design. I think it's because the game didn't know what it was, what it wanted to be. It just lacked identity. Some chapters in Resident Evil 6 were very horror focused, while in the same game, other chapters were straight up third person action shooters where you're mowing down everything. This created such a jarring and fragmented experience throughout the entire game. From beginning to end, though, Resident Evil 2 Remake is a slow-paced, stressful, and terrifying survival horror experience. The developers of this game, they knew they had a very clear and precise vision for what they wanted this game to be, and it really shows. The atmosphere is dark, the zombies and monsters look so terrifying, and there's amazing storytelling through the level design. You can't help but have your imagination run wild when you see the dismembered corpses in the Raccoon City Police Department. And if you take the time to read the notes and the journals left by the people, it'll add this fantastic layer of depth to what it must have been like to try to survive, but only to fail and to succumb to these zombie attacks. Resident Evil 2 Remake, it does not rely on cheap jump scares to scare you to add to the horror experience. Resident Evil 2 Remake builds meticulously through effort this terrifying atmosphere, this terrifying experience through the lighting, the lack of lighting, the slow movements from the characters, the resource management with limited ammo and inventory. But honestly, I would argue that the most crucial aspect of any horror experience is sound design, and Resident Evil 2 Remake nails this. Subtle noises and sounds cause you to fear the unknown because you don't know where the zombies are, or the noises will be used to mislead you into assuming the zombie is down the hallway when there's actually something else behind you or beside you. Resident Evil 2 Remake uses sound design to its fullest potential to basically give you a heart attack when it comes to the unstoppable monster, Mr. X. Mr. X is this nearly unstoppable enemy that stalks you through the majority of the game, and he shows up at the perfect moment in the game. It's when you start to finally feel more comfortable with the game, you feel more confident with what you're doing, and that you'll survive the Raccoon City Police Department. And it's at this moment that Mr. X literally smashes through the wall and starts stalking you for the remainder of the game. Even when you can't see Mr. X, just hearing his loud and overbearing footsteps throughout the Raccoon City Police Department causes you to panic and to be afraid because you know that your time in what you think is a safe area isn't safe anymore because X is going to come for you. If you're looking for a very intense survival horror experience, then I would recommend playing this game on its hardest difficulty, where the enemies not only hit you harder, you have less health and they have more health, but more importantly, on the hardest difficulty, saving is now a limited feature in this game because you have to pick up finite limited amount of ink ribbons, which is what you use to save in the game. You have to bring these ink ribbons, which takes up precious inventory space, so that you can manually save at specific locations in the game. You have to decide, will you save more frequently to provide yourself a sense of security, but only to have no more ink ribbons, which means you can't save before a tough boss encounter? Or will you save your inventory space and save your ink ribbons so that you can try to manually save before a pivotal boss encounter, only to risk losing any progress if you don't make it to that boss? Either way, whatever choice you make, this ramps up the tension and survival horror experience. If you enjoyed the original Resident Evil games, or Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, or Dead Space 1, you will absolutely love Resident Evil 2 Remake. It offers a fresh new experience for those who are familiar with the original game, while still remaining incredibly faithful to the source material. I'm so grateful that I got to experience this modern remake with modern graphics and better gameplay controls, and I'm just so happy that more people get to experience what I consider to be one of the best horror video games ever, the original and the remake. I honestly can't wait to see what Capcom does next. It's such an important franchise to me. Can't wait to see what they do. Thanks everyone for listening, and happy gaming.
Hey, Nerf herders.
You sure you want to go with that?
Hey, everyone?
There we go. More inviting.
Have you ever had a movie that you really wanted to love, but something holds you back?
Or one that you did love in spite of a flaw?
Well, I'm Case Aiken.
And I'm Sam Alisea.
And on Another Pass, we sit down with cool guests to look at movies that we find fascinating.
But flawed.
And we try to imagine what could have been done when they were made to give them that little push.
We're not experts. We just believe in criticism.
Constructive criticism.
Sure.
So come take another pass at some movies with us.
And every now and then, we can celebrate movies that did it on their own, too.
You can find us at certainpov.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Pass it on.
CPOV.
certainpov.com.